So here's the introduction to our fabulous returning speaker, Janet Zaretsky. She is a master professional executive coach and trainer. She is an author and she is a much touted speaker. And I love the title of today's presentation. I am confident and I'm not sorry. There needs to be some gestures going along with that. So the subtext of that is show up powerfully and kick the career crippling habit of reflexive apologizing, to which I am guilty. All right, Janet is a master professional executive coach, trainer, author, speaker who helps people unleash their brilliance. All of you, unleash your brilliance, confidence, and visibility in the world. Janet has worked with over 33,000 people in the past 25 years. Good Lord, girl. She is a powerful advocate for ending the gender gap, both in pay and in influence. Her work with women has led her to be a frequent contributor to Forbes and the author of Where'd My Confidence Go? And How Do I Get It Back? Known as the BS to Brilliance Master, she has a gift for having you unapologetically and confidently express yourself and succeed as the unique and powerful professional that you are. But if you are male, do not think that this information is only applicable to females. Everybody has brilliance that needs to be unleashed. So stick around, listen up. She is a 2-time TEDx and keynote speaker, a corporate trainer and expert in communication and leadership, an International Coach Federation member, certified conversational intelligence coach, certified in behavioral style instruments, graduate of Coach U, former senior program leader for Landmark Worldwide, co-founder of Impact Speaking Lab. I'm totally out of breath. You can find more information at janetzaretsky.com. I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm going to give the floor to the legendary Janet Zaretsky.
Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Every word we say matters. And it's funny because as you did the introduction and then it's like, I'm out of breath. It's like language matters. In the world of unleashing your brilliance, are you owning how brilliant, how amazing you are? And we're going to use the chat feature, by the way, quite a bit today because I like when I speak in a public forum, I like a lot of interaction because having a talking head and some slides at you doesn't really have what I have to say integrated. And my commitment today is that you walk away more aware of how your words matter with a change in the words. So when you get aware of things, you have an access to changing them. When you're not aware, when things are in the background, it's like you don't have eyes in the back of your head. So, you know, if you think about it, words really do create our reality. In fact, as people, we create who we are, we create who each other is, we create what we want in this world, and our words shape our emotions, our experiences, and of course, as a result, they shape our lives and the results we have and we produce in the world. What we say reflects how we view ourselves. This is the beginning of when you should start thinking about what the words you use. Gosh, how is that reflecting how I view myself? They also reflect how we are perceived by others and our ability to influence our careers and even those we touch in our day-to-day lives. So I want to begin today to look at something that is a habit, and this is definitely not just for women. This is across the board for men and women. It is a habit you and I likely have that is a hidden and crippling career throttler. In fact, for those of you who are going in to get a job, it's even more important that you pay attention today and do some damage to, I'll get into this in a minute, but the 5 career crippling automatic apologizing behaviors. So this is what I call the apology trap. And I love this picture. So I want you to take a personal inventory. And again, I said I want to use the chat. So if you recognize I do this, just write yes in the chat, because I'm going to go through the 5 most common career crippling automatic apologizing behaviors. They rob you of power unconsciously. So the first one is automatic reflexive apologizing. What do I mean? Well, sorry, I'm sorry. Just automatic, pass the ketchup. I'm sorry, pass the ketchup. Or going into a store and you and another person are both going for, shopping. You're going to go get the same can of green beans in the same area, and you automatically apologize. You didn't hit each other. You just start, I'm sorry. Or one of the favorite ones that I had happen, and I don't know if this has happened to you, but going into the grocery store, somebody, is in the grocery store doing their job, their stocking or whatever. I'm going in that area, they don't have to move, but they apologize. Now, frankly, I've said, what are you apologizing for? You're just doing your job. But it's so automatic, it just slips out of your mouth. So if that is you, I got to get over here to the chat. If that is you, just chat it, say yes, yes, yes. That is me. I'm doing that. So if that's you, chat that in there, write it in there so you can acknowledge it for yourself. So the number 2 one is apologetic body language. So what do I mean? Well, you say something, you shrug your shoulders, you hold your body in a protective stance or holding yourself small. Now, in the Zoom world or in our other world, it might be sitting back in a meeting, not up on the edge of your chair, not participating. Or, and this is a very common one, and frankly, we do see this more with women than men, but I've seen it with men, having an upward lilt at the end of a sentence, as if you're questioning what you're saying. Like, this is my opinion. I have a hard time doing it. But do you know what I mean? Can you tell me yes, yes, yes? You understand what I mean? Great, thank you. Okay, the third one, which is over here, is softening your opinions or your thoughts. So I call this like couching what you have to say. You say just before you say, well, I just think this, or saying, well, in my opinion, so you're qualifying it, or saying, do you mind if, let me tell you what I think, or there's some way in which you are softening what you have to say, including in writing, putting a smiley face after a request, or somehow in writing, say, well, do you mind if, and you're asking somebody to do something, but you're qualifying it, questioning it, even if it's their job. It's not a straight request. What you're doing is couching it, or putting some protection for yourself, by the way, around it. I'll get to why this happens in a moment. Does that make sense to you guys? Do you know what I'm talking about? Yes. Okay, great. And then the other one is when you thank someone, you get acknowledged, and instead of just simply saying thank you, wow, that was a really good job, Kathy, you don't say, well, thank you. Well, it was a team effort. Even if it was a team effort, you got acknowledged, but somehow you're pushing away and not allowing yourself to get the acknowledgement. You are, in fact, softening it. Okay, the fourth one is stepping over or holding back and not correcting someone. And this is really super common because often we're concerned about not hurting someone or being what I call nice, and I'll get to that in a minute, by not saying something versus saying what there is to say. So an example of this is you see somebody saying something or doing something that you know isn't exactly how it should be done, or diminishes someone is another very common one. And instead of saying, hey, Joe, you know, the way you spoke to Larry did not really work and leave him honored, you don't say anything. So you hold it back or you step over it. And I want to give you an analogy, because one of the things I said is I'm really committed to you being awake and aware of these things, is an analogy of stepping over a rattlesnake. So if you step over a rattlesnake and it's asleep and it wakes up, it will bite you. So if you think about stepping over things, those little things you step over pile up and will come back to bite you in the butt. So you don't want to step over things. And I'll give you different ways in which you can say them that doesn't diminish that person and doesn't diminish you. And then the last one is you have no risk. You take what you get. What do I mean? And this is a critical one given this population of people. You don't negotiate. You don't negotiate for a salary. You don't negotiate for a job that maybe you decide, well, I don't have all the qualifications. You just take what you get. There's literally no risk. And there's a reason you do this, but it is, when I talk about career crippling, this is career crippling. There is a study many years ago that 57% of men will negotiate a salary and 7% of women will. Both numbers are ridiculously low, in my opinion. Everybody should negotiate. It's better to ask for too much and negotiate down than to not negotiate at all and end up taking whatever people give you. That says something about you, and you want to talk about career crippling. I will tell you just a brief little anecdote or story of my own daughter in one of her first major jobs. She goes, no, this is, you know, when she got her salary, her base, she's in sales, so here's her base plus commission. She got her base salary, and I'm like, well, negotiate it. She said, no, that's the salary. So she took the base plus commission. She's just thriving, leading the org. She's doing great. Then she later found out other people negotiated it, and she's making $6,000 less in base than other people. Now, $6,000 may not seem like a lot at this point because she's making it up in commission. But if we look at statistics from starting from here versus starting from here, over a lifetime, that will grow. And that makes a huge difference over the lifetime of a salary negotiation. The other one that's in no risk is letting someone take credit for what you did. That's a little bit of sometimes the team effort, but in a meeting, you say something, nobody responds, and then somebody else says what you said, and they get credit and you don't say anything. So if that's ever happened to you, will you put that in there in the chat? Yes, that's happened to me. Because I'm going to give you a way to say these things. And this one I'll give you right away. So if somebody does that, the way to deal with that without diminishing them, because that's not a good strategy either, is to simply say, hey, Joe, thanks for reinforcing my idea. Thus, it elevates him, it gives you credit, and it keeps you in the game. And you feel good because you didn't step over it. The other one is not taking on a project or a job unless you're sure you can succeed. So there was also, I love research, so I'll give you a few points of that. There was a study that showed that women, and this again, women versus men, I'm certainly not anti-men at all. I want to contribute to men as well, but I think it's important for us to see what studies have shown, that women will look at a job description and they will only apply if they have 100% of those qualifications. Men will, and if it isn't men, and you can be in either camps, but this is just a study. Women will only apply if it's men. Okay, sorry. Sometimes when I talk too fast, this is what happens to me. So women will only apply if the 100%. Men will apply if they have 60%. So I invite all of us to take the 60%. If I have 60%, apply for it. Go for it. The worst case scenario, you don't hear back. But if you don't go for it, you'll never hear back. So it's a question of being willing to get a no versus you being the no because you didn't apply. That's the essence of no risk. See, all of this has a huge cost. And the cost of this, reflexive over-apologizing, costs you being an influencer, having your voice heard. It costs you money, like I said with my daughter's example. It costs you salary, it costs you fees, whatever way in which you get paid. It costs you relationships, both internal in a company, all over your life. It costs you getting what you want. It costs you respect, including respecting yourself. It costs you your reputation, and it costs you satisfaction and fulfillment. We actually know that when people are reflexive over apologizers, they're often passed over, ignored, and manipulated. Our voices, your voice, our contribution is diminished, and all the brilliance and everything you have to contribute in the world is not as powerful as it could be when you are reflexive over apologizing. So, why do we do this? First of all, there was an article in Psychology Today pointed out that this is more common for men, but it influences both of us. See, if I am constantly saying I'm sorry reflexively and including other ways of saying I'm sorry, just diminishing it, saying perhaps this might not be right, saying, hey, in just my opinion, before I state something, or ending what I say with a smiley face or some other icon to be softened, it will be perceived as what I have to say is unimportant, and thus that diminishes my influence and my way of being seen as a leader. And frankly, when it comes to climbing the corporate ladder or being a bigger person on the world stage and leaving the impression that I am powerful, it weakens that. And that has a real world impact. So why we do this, Beverly Engel, who's a psychotherapist with over 25 years in the industry and the author of The Power of Apology, did research. It revealed that when parents, so if you're a parent, pay attention to this, when parents teach their kids to apologize for everything, even when they didn't do something deserving of an apology, or if the parents teach their kids that apologizing is being polite, they end up with kids that are reflexive over apologizers. Now, the other issue is if somebody has been abused in some way through their life, they often become reflexive over apologizers to stave off the potential of someone getting angry, even though they are not in that situation anymore. Now, another common reason is fear of conflict. So if I go around the room, if I were to do this, I will always ask this when I'm in person, is how many people love conflict? Nobody raises their hand. Or maybe one person raises the hand. None of us love conflict. But if you're a conflict avoider, you will find yourself in one of these behaviors. Now, kind of interesting. Why are we all so afraid of conflict? Do you know what conflict actually is? Conflict is actually a conversation. Now, can you survive a conversation? There is no real threat, but threat is ingrained in us at the level of our brain neural patterns. So I want to explain to you the neuroscience of this. Don't worry, I'm not going to get into deep neuroscience. I'm going to give this to you in a very simple, easy to get way. See, what happens is when we experience a threat, and I'm going to say it may not even be conscious, when our brain experiences a threat, what happens is something in your brain called the amygdala or the reptilian brain gets triggered. And it gives you what I call a bad margarita. It floods your system with neurochemicals, epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol to name the major ones, which gives you a reptilian response. And when this happens, we call that the fight, flight, freeze, or appease others response. And that is a really critical one. When you're people pleasing, and automatic apologizing is a way of people pleasing, or any of those behaviors I brought up, that's all coming from threat response. So you do those behaviors in a response to what's happening in your brain. And you may have known that, you may not have known that, but it also wakes up the hippocampus where all your hard and painful memories are stored. And it's a lifetime reminder of the threat, which triggers the reaction over and over. And it sets you up for automatic apologizing. Now, the good news is that we do know you can retrain your brain and set up new neural patterns. So a couple of other things about this is when your brain gets triggered and you're in that fight, flight, freeze, or appease reaction, what you can't do is think. It actually slows down the synaptic responses that get to your executive functioning of your brain, where your empathy, your creativity, and frankly, your brilliance lies. So anytime that happens, I don't know, I call it the stupid air. You know, as a speaker and as a trainer, I deal with people a lot that it's like somebody asked me a question, and I want you to map this on, given who I'm talking to interviews. So interviews in themselves are a public speaking opportunity or private speaking opportunity, and inherently there's threat. So if you can map on what I'm teaching you here into that, that will give you a lot of power. When you have that response and it happens over and over again, and you can't think, there are ways to break it. And I'm going to give you a very simple technique that I call the wait technique. And I know how I'm breaking this down seems like it's a long time to do. It takes seconds. And my clients often do this technique. So wait stands for what happened, what actually happened. See, you're not responding to what actually happened. Your brain is responding to the threat. So if you can say what happened, oh, somebody asked me a question. A, what did I assume? And add to what happened. I, what did I interpret? So they said something, and I interpreted it as they didn't like me, for example, and I added that to what happened. And take it away, you're left with what happened. And all that happened is somebody asked you a question, or somebody looked at you. there are so many times when I've worked with speakers and developing speakers, they're like, well, they looked at me funny. No, they just looked at you. And you added funny. They added, they didn't like me. And this will also relate to interviews. I often tell people, do you know people have weird looks on their face? We are not in control of facial expressions for the most part. And I always think it this way. So I'm going to give you a funny. When somebody has a funny look on their face and you think, oh, they didn't like me or something like that, just say, maybe they have gas. Maybe they just have gas. That's what they look like. The point is, if you can interrupt your brain pattern in the moment it's happening, the amygdala hijack, you can restore yourself. And the biggest way you can do it is by connecting. So just take a breath, reconnect with somebody, and your brain will give you good neurochemicals instead of the bad neurochemicals. See, we're going to do some work together here in a moment, and this is why I brought this one up. I'm committed that this presentation today, this webinar, allows you to wake up to your own automatic reflexive behaviors that diminishes your power and diminishes your ability to influence, and you can begin to intervene and stop apologizing for everything. You can make the difference that you are here on this planet to make. Your brilliance, your contribution, your influence can and will impact the world. And your brilliance cannot be fully expressed when who you are and how you are is automatically, reflexively apologetic. I'd like you to close your eyes for a moment. And I'd like you to imagine a world where your thoughts get translated into reality. Imagine the level of influence that you could have if you simply stopped reflexively apologizing. Imagine a meeting where you have input and you don't soften your input by saying, just, do you mind if, well, this might not be right, or any other way where you minimize what you have to say. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't be polite. I'm not saying that at all. However, if you look, there are numerous times when you did nothing deserving of an apology, and yet what comes out of your mouth without thinking is, oh, I'm sorry. Someone runs into you. They ran into you, and you say, I'm sorry. Or you ask for something, including things that people owe you because you're working with them. And you say, I'm sorry. One of the most common things that happens is, I hear it all the time, and I will say, don't apologize. I'm in a habit now of interrupting that for other people so that they wake up to that automatic. See, say you're sorry when you need to say you're sorry. The automatic doesn't serve you. There is no need to apologize for doing your job or simply being in the same space. Now, perhaps if we run into each other, there might be a need for excuse me. But by the way, there's a world of difference between I'm sorry and excuse me. Saying I can excuse me, for example, is common courtesy and restores something in our relationship, such as a thought like, I accidentally bumped into you, excuse me for doing that, fine, no problem. You have to really look at what saying I'm sorry for my very existence when who you are is automatically, reflexively apologizing. And we're all in this apology trap, and it's killing our success. It's diminishing our ability to influence to rise to the top of your profession and frankly, probably to get a job. Now, personally, I was always too loud, too emotional, too something when I was growing up. And I learned to suppress myself. But what I also suppressed was my own success. I stopped that, and I'm inviting you to stop that. Your brilliance, your creativity, and likely much of the world's innovation and even solutions to world problems are trapped inside the automatic reflexive apologies and apologetic ways of being. And for me, I'm hoping it's time for a change. It's time to wake up to the destructive habit and create a new language, a language of empowerment, a language that allows your brilliance, your vision, and your gifts to be unleashed in the world. So I want to take a little bit of time to do some brainstorming. And what I want to do is we're going to use the chat. I don't think, can we do, I didn't even ask this. It's always fun to do this if we can do breakout rooms. Can we do that in this?
I have breakout rooms ready.
Okay. I think the most effective way to do this is to do it in breakout rooms so that you can verbally talk to each other and then spend a little time doing that and come back together and then share your ideas. So what I want you to do is brainstorm alternatives to automatic reflexive apologizing, to using passive body language, to softening and qualifying your opinions, to being nice and stepping over things in ways you can take risks. So how this will work is, I don't know, how many breakout rooms can we put people in?
I have 4 people in each room and about 10 rooms, I think.
Perfect. So that's always the ideal. So in the rooms, just brainstorm, come up with.
Like to keep them there?
Pardon?
How long would you like to keep them there?
Hold on, let me set it up and then let me think through. So 5 minutes. So if we did 10 minutes in rooms and then had one person come back as a spokesperson and then share, what did you come up? Alternative ways of being, alternative things you could do, alternative things you could say, rather than I'm sorry. And then we'll come back and have each of the room spokespersons share, and then we can steal from each other. So my intention is that you come away with some practical alternative things you can do. So before we go, are there questions? And can people raise their hand and you see it, or do I need to pay attention to chat?
Thank you.
Awesome. So we've got them in the chat. Take them into their rooms, please. And then don't put me in a room because
Be sure to accept your join request.
Okay.
Here we go.
So accept your join. So I'm anxious to hear what you, if we could hear, so somebody said they were a scribe, if they can capture as much of this so you could, share this later. I want to hear from each room, what'd you come up with?
Okay, I take the lead. I don't know my room number, but let's try. So in my room, we were 3 people and we had different way of apologizing. Me being French, usually when I have an interview or I do a discussion with people, I have tendency to apologize for my French accent. And probably it will be better to just tell, do you understand what I mean? Do you want me to clarify and not apologize for what I am?
Love it.
It is one thing that we have seen. After we tell that we need also to control some of our passive body language when we are hesitant and things like this, where we do back and forward to make sure that we feel confident. And we were really focusing more on the interview at the beginning of the discussion, where we were looking at we need to be confident and show what we are when we do any meeting or anything, and it will reflect better. And after I was telling that because of my culture, there is a lot of politeness and things like this. And when I receive an email without greetings or without anything, I'm frustrated because for me, it's something that should be always in my email when I receive. Otherwise, I don't really want to read an email because I don't have my greetings and my how are you starting. This is the report of my room. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. So I may speak to a couple of things as I hear the appropriateness of it. So one thing I didn't set up is there are ways to set up how you want things heard, and especially in emails, all that greeting stuff. So has anybody ever really gotten something out of all the stuff we say before we actually say anything? If you think about our worlds, like we're moving. Oh, it's great to see you, da da da. All that filler stuff, mostly on your hand in terms of culturally or what you're used to, it occurs abrupt, right? And so when that occurs, you're put off. But what if all that stuff is filler? And there's other ways you could start off conversations. And what I call is creating a container for what I'm about to say. 2 ways to do that. My intention is say what you're going to say. I'm committed to say what you're going to say. So that you are shaping the way in which it's being received, especially in writing. But hi, how are you? All that stuff, nobody cares. That's just habits. It's no different than I'm sorry. But if you set people up by creating the container for what you're going to say, makes a bigger difference for people to hear it in the way in which you intend it. So does that make sense to you, Aurelian?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean,
okay, good.
My container of good morning, and I know everybody avoid it, but it is something that I'm used to.
Yes, but it used to versus does it contribute? Because mostly people don't care about it. It's like, how are you? You're not in a conversation. It's different when you're in a conversation than in writing. So it's habits. Okay, great. Thank you for that. Someone else?
I'll go ahead and go, I guess.
Thank you.
I don't know what room number we're in, but I think I was in with Graciela, Betty, and Mike. We focused quite a bit on automatic reflexive apologizing. And one of the alternatives that was brought up was, rather than saying, I'm sorry, blah, 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 starting with, I have a different idea. Here it is. Or alternatively, we could do something. Excuse me. I think the best one maybe one of the best ones we came up with, and again, I was just doing it, is really repeating what it is that they said. If you're in a conversation where there's potential conflict, let them know that you understand, and then follow up with, how about this idea? Or this is what I think, this is what I believe. And we had a little bit of discussion about some negative words that could be thrown in potentially after the word, I'm sorry, but, and somebody once mentioned to me that when you follow something, a phrase or something like that with the word but, that it means, no, I'm not really sorry.
Yeah, so you can correct it. It's like, oh, I personally, when you're breaking free of this, it's like if you say, I'm sorry, but it's the same as softening. But if you say, I'm sorry, and it was reflexive, you go, wait a minute, let me take that back. And then just do that. It's like a break in something that's automatic. And it takes time to break this. I still deal with automatic. I've been doing it for years. Mostly I don't. I'll say, sorry, wait a minute, I'm not. And then say it.
And one way to just replace the word but is to say and.
That's true.
You know, maybe you are truly sorry. I'm sorry for interrupting you, and I will try not to do it again.
Yeah, that's fine if you're interrupting. Or one of the things I'll say is, I'm going to interrupt you. Just straight out. I'm going to interrupt you. I mean, people go on and on and on. I'm going to interrupt you now. So you're warning them. I'm not apologizing. I'm just doing it.
Right.
And acknowledging it. So you're acknowledging something. It's great. Okay. Thank you. Someone else? I would love to hear from all of the spokespeople. You got to jump out there.
About 8 of them.
Go ahead.
We actually have 7 of them. I was in room 7 and nobody joined, and so I hopped out and I later got put into room 8. But that was I was only there for a minute and I didn't contribute or anything. But so while I was waiting to be brought back into something about, the only thing I came up with myself, thinking about the automatic apology, reflexive apologizing, was just self-awareness. And then as I went on to passive body language, thinking about that, again, just came up with self-awareness. Try to be cognizant of what you're doing. Just knowing these things is great, because now it's something you can think about and try to keep in the back of your mind, and just try to stay self-aware, and maybe think for just a second before you say something long enough to make sure that first word isn't sorry.
Yeah. It's great. Self-awareness is the first step. Okay, someone else?
I can go next.
Thank you.
There were just 2 of us in the room, and we did talk about automatic reflexive apologizing, saying things like excuse me or pardon me, something like that, without apologizing, especially when you're not doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
And we talked about passive body language a little bit, being able to, when you speak, make sure that you're speaking clearly and at a good tone. Don't speak softly. If you speak too softly, people are going to think you're uncertain of what you're saying.
Great. Love it. Yes, I totally agree with you. You got to get heard. Perfect. Thank you. Anyone else? I'm going to give you a minute and then we'll move on.
I can go next.
Thank you.
In our group, we didn't get to everything, but one of the ones that we talked about was the body language, right? So when you're having that body language, you actually have to be thinking about what your body language is doing, right? So you're actively thinking, okay, I'm going to sit up straight, I'm going to have my chin up, and all of those positive body language things. So you're actively thinking about it all the time until it becomes second nature. One of the things I liked the best that we talked about was you get better results just by charging ahead, right? And it's not a switch that you flip on, but it's a mindset that you can develop. And one of the people said luck favors the bold is kind of one of the mantras that he's lived by his whole life. And the last one was just using more confident language and remembering that your opinion is just as valid as the next person's.
I love what you just said. That is so key. Everyone, I keep saying unleash your brilliance, because in my view, human beings, we are all connected and we're all brilliant and all have something to offer. If you open your mouth, you are going to contribute. Holding back will not have your contribution in the world. So I love luck favors the bold. It's like, if you don't contribute and you swallow it, nobody's going to get it. Amazing. Thank you. And I want to be cognizant of the time. So I'm going to, this slide. It's like we are all brilliant. We're all Superman. And if we could get that, that would make such a difference in the world. When you are no different. We are all the same, and we all have something to be a Superman about. Breaking free of the apology trap requires you to get conscious. It requires you to interrupt all the areas where you automatically apologize. And I acknowledge all of you, those that spoke, those that didn't speak for what you came up with. And I invite you to continue this conversation in other places in your life and start interrupting others. It will help you get conscious and help you interrupt it for yourself. If we embody being unapologetic and confident in your tone of voice, in your writing, don't sugarcoat anything, be straight, make solid statements, solid requests, and give up putting smiley faces. You will be real, you'll be authentic, and you'll let people see the real you and know you, all of you. The mistakes and your failings are not a shame. They're not evidence that you're less than. They're actually simply what makes you and I alike. We are all so connected, and we are contributing to each other all the time. So I want you to unleash your brilliance and your creativity and your contribution to the world. Be unapologetically you, and honor everyone else for being unapologetically them. So I have a couple gifts for you. One is my Unapologetic Powerhouse Manifesto. And I actually have this, if I turn my camera, you see it, it's up on my wall, but it's like, this is who you are, and just get grounded in it. And then the other thing I have is, this is my Confident I'm Not Sorry, just a reminder. And if you guys want both of those, this is how you get it. You text it. Text for 773-770-4377. That's the phone number. The 2 words, be powerful. It'll email or text you back and say, give me your email, and then this will automatically get sent to you.